A. Dan Sach Loi Fat Hien Duok. Fan 1, Lo Hong Logic, Evelyn Chua Ko Ban Sa Tai Lu Jia and Hung Lai Ket 1 Hai Chu KY, identical, Chi 2 Tri No, Don. I held the document beneath the desk lamp. They were identical. Sua Ton Nan Zet De Dat Rang Kak Net, looked unervingly close. De Vic So San Chin Zak Chi Dien Rao Part 2. Fan 1, Not Chuan Bang Chung / Chi Teet. For tiny characters, Kong Kop Voi Ma, 1147, B, Don. For tiny characters handwritten in blue ink, Sua Ton, a tiny code handwritten in blue ink. Fan 2, Lo Hong Logic, Chua Jai Tik V Saw Herald De Ko Nai Ban Trust / Share Assignment Ma Melissa Vua Nak Toi Hum Truok, Va Vi Saw Tai Lu Ko Fan Lai Dan Toi Thay Doi Gwyn Tren Tai Ko On Non Hung, Don Herald, opened a locked cabinet, Sua Ton Herald Trui Cap Corporate Records Portal, in Share Assignment De Doak filed. Sao Du Goi Claire De Zak Nan Non Hung De Dua Veo Management Authorization Trong Kung Filing Packet. Fan 2, Nip Cam Suk Tut, Sao Hien Tuong Dong Ho Dung 0817, Mak Chien Kwa and Han Sang Jai Tik Fap Ly. Don Dao Truok Chien Di Toi Ven Fong Herald Bo Sung Non Noi Tom Evelyn Vi Vik Loi Ken Bao Kwa Arthur Dang By Dung De Day Ba Ra Koi Chin Kuok Doi Min. Fan 2, Jong / Boi Kan Chua Tu Nin, Vik Dung Pay Phone Nguai Grocery Store Hoi Lek Voi Boi Kan Hien Dai Von De Ko Cell Phone, Metadata Va Corporate Portal, Don Goi Martin Keller Doi Ton Evelyn Lai Xe Toi Parking Lot Yen Tin Va Goi Bang Cell Phone. Fan 2, Du Dai Sai, Ban Gok Koang 518-2, Dui Muc 550-702 Sao Hu Chin, Mo Rong Noi Tom / Boi Kan and Hong Kong Them Nut Trianwa. Ban Sua, Koang 634-2. Fan 3, Lo Hong Logic, Angwan Keen Daniel Beat Con So 51% Con Hoi Mo Ho, De Tao Kem Jiak on Beat Mot Du Kien Chua Doak Chung Min De Trian Toi On. Don Daniel Noi, Dad wanted 51%. Lam Ro Melissa Ko the De Noi Con So Na Trong Lukban Paperwork Va Herald Sao Du Zak Nan Ong Chua Tung Noi Voi Daniel Ve Ku Hoch 51%. Fan 3, Du Dai Sai, Ban Gok Koang 513-2, Mo Rong Sung. Noi Tom Evelyn Ve Hai Ka Nong, Daniel By Tao Tung Hoke Chu Dong Lam Ngo. Ban Sua, Koang 601-2. Fan 4, Lo Hong Logic / Hien Tuong Siu Nin, Ka, Not a Haunting. A message, Ket Luan Kwa Som Trong Kai Radio Kong Cam Dien Va Buk on Tu Roy Van Chua Doak Jai Tik. Don Fat Hien Timer Trong Grandfather Clock Sua Ton, at least that part was not a haunting, Va Chu Dong Jewel Radio / Photo La Fan Chua Jai Ma Den Part 6. Fan 4, Lo Hong Logic Bang Chung. Metadata Chi Chung Min Draft Tun Tai Bon Thang Truok Kai Arthur Mat, Chua Du Tu No Chung Min Melissa La Nuoi Tao Draft, Don. Melissa had been preparing this, Sua Ton, someone had started building the paperwork, De Trake Nin Qua Melissa Doak Kung Ko Bang Chui Bang Chung Sao. Fan 4, Lo Hong Logic, Daniel Noi knew the beat Chin Zak, Path to 1147, B, Du Truok Du Chua Ko Ly Du On Phi No Maho So See You The. Don Daniel Thursday Nan Sua Ton On Chi Noi Cho Melissa Beat Kak Equipment Contracts Nam Trong Study Cabinet, 1147, B La Mot Trong Kak File Du. Fan 4, Cliffhanger U, Arthur named Martin Keller, La Fat Hien Moi and Hung Chua Du Man So Voi Cliffhanger Part 3, 2-3 Ka Koi Them Ka Arthur Ghi Can 10 Martin, he has the only number that makes a transfer real. Fan 4, Du Dai Sai, Ban Gok Koang 521-2, Mo Rong Voa Du Fan Baden Va Logic Trui Zut Electronic Filing Package. Ban Sua, Koang 607-2. Fan 5, Not Chuan Bang Chung / Lo Hong Logic, Moi Noi Jua Share Transfer Vo Hu Va Gwyn Daniel Tren Tai Koan Non Hang Chua Doak Nak Lai Roo Chao Treo. Don Herald Jai Tikhu Luke Qua Transfer Bo Sung Rang Non Hung De Dua Veo Filing Packet Ko V Hoplo. Kai Underlying Transfer That By. Expanded Authority Qua Daniel Kung Ko Soda By Hui / Challenged. Fan 5, Du Dai Sai, Ban Gok Koang 542, mo rong noi tom Evelyn va lam ro, only number, la transaction code qua Martin. Ban sua, Koang 603-2. Fan 6, Lo Hong Logic / Jai Mabi Mat, Ban Gok Jai Tik Timer Qua Dong Ho Va Y Nia 817 and Hung Chua Jai Tik Bur Static 2 Radio Kong Cam Dien Va Vik Buk on Roy O Part 3, Trong Kai Lai Kang Din, there had never been a ghost, Don 200 to 302 Koi Bo Sung Battery Receiver, Backup Batteries Trong Radio Va Spring Clip Qua Kung On, Tat Ca Thwak Ko Che Arthur Chuan Bai. Fan 6, Du Dai Sai, Ban Gok Koang 514-2. Mo Rong Don Riang 2 Trong Study, Jai Ma Hon Chin 817 Va Ju Trong Tom O Ran Gioi Tinu 2 Trong Qua Evelyn. Ban Sua, 702. Kong Fat Hien Mao Thuan Dang Ku Ve 10 / Quan He Nan Vat, Kak Mok Thoi John Chin, Tai La 49% / 51%, Tuoi 72 Qua Evelyn, Koang Catch 5/9 miles, So Tien $18,000, Ma 1147, B. Hey Trin 2 Email 8 Thang / Draft 4 Thang Truoc Kai Arthur Qua Doi. Kong Ko Kum Cam Suk Noi Bat Now Lap Qua Tu Lon Trong Kung Modifan Den Muc Kan Sua Riang. B. Ban Trian Da Sua Hon Chin. You don't get to erase me from my own life just because my husband is gone. The words came out sharper than I expected, loud enough that the young teller behind the counter looked up. I had spent 72 years learning how to keep my voice calm, especially when I was hurt. But that morning, standing inside First Commonwealth Bank in Richmond, Virginia, I felt something inside me finally push back. I had come to transfer $18,000 from the Whitmore family trust to pay for a new roof before the fall rain started. Arthur and I had used that same bank for nearly 30 years. The branch manager, Claire Donovan, knew my face. She also knew Arthur had passed 3 months earlier after complications from pneumonia. So when Claire asked me to step into her office and quietly close the door, I already knew something was wrong. She turned her monitor toward herself and folded her hands. Mrs. Whitmore, I'm afraid you no longer have sole authority over this account. For several seconds, I thought I had misheard her. Then she explained that Daniel, my son, had been added under a special control provision connected to the family trust. I stared at her. I never signed anything like that. Claire's expression changed. Not disbelief. Concern. The paperwork indicates the change came from documents authorized before Mr. Whitmore passed. My fingers went cold. Arthur had handled the business side of our life, yes, but he never made major decisions without telling me. Not once in 40 years. I called Daniel from the parking lot. Melissa answered his phone. Evelyn, she said, too smoothly, we were trying to make things easier for you. Easier. As though grief had turned me into a child. That evening, Daniel and Melissa drove the 9 miles from their house and arrived with a black leather folder. Daniel barely met my eyes. Melissa did most of the talking. She explained that Arthur had supposedly updated parts of the trust before his death so Daniel could help manage company shares and investments. Then she slid one document across my kitchen table. At the bottom was Arthur's signature. My husband's name. Arthur J. Whitmore. For one strange moment, the old grandfather clock in the hallway stopped ticking. I looked toward it. The second hand hung motionless at 8:17. Then, without anyone touching it, it started again. Melissa kept talking as if nothing had happened. I looked back at the signature. It was perfect. Too perfect. During Arthur's final months, arthritis had made his handwriting uneven. He complained that his J looked like a fishhook. But this signature was smooth, strong, almost exactly like the one he used years earlier. I asked to keep a copy. Melissa pulled the page back. Harold Bennett already has everything he needs, she said. That was when I noticed a tiny code handwritten in blue ink near the lower corner, 1147B. My heart gave one hard beat. I had seen that number before. After they left, I waited until their headlights disappeared around the bend, then walked into Arthur's study. The room still smelled faintly of cedar and his old coffee. I opened the small fireproof safe behind the bookcase and searched through folders I had not touched since the funeral. Near the bottom was a manila file marked 1147B. I opened it. Inside was a 3-year-old equipment purchase contract from Whitmore Supply Company. And there, at the bottom of the final page, was Arthur's signature. I held the document beneath the desk lamp and studied it. The curve of the A. The slant of the W. Even the little break Arthur sometimes left in the final stroke looked unnervingly close to what I had just seen. I could not prove anything from memory. But I could feel something was wrong. Then I noticed something that made me sit down. In the margin beside Arthur's original signature, written in pencil in his own unmistakable hand, were 5 words I had never seen before. If they use this, Evelyn. If they use this, Evelyn. I read Arthur's penciled warning 3 times before I trusted my own eyes. The room felt suddenly colder, though the thermostat in the hallway still read 72 degrees. I touched the edge of the contract and heard the grandfather clock stop again. 8:17, the same time as before. For 40 years, Arthur had wound that clock every Sunday night. He used to joke that if it ever stopped twice in one day, I should pay attention. I had always laughed. That night, I didn't. What unsettled me most was not the clock itself. It was the thought that Arthur had left a warning beside the exact signature now being used to push me aside. I had spent my marriage trusting him. Now I had to decide whether I trusted what he had tried to leave behind. The next morning, I drove 5 miles downtown to Harold Bennett's office with the 1147B file tucked inside my handbag. Harold had handled Whitmore family business for almost 20 years. He was 64, silver-haired, careful with his words, and not easily surprised. But when I placed the contract on his desk and showed him Arthur's note, he stopped turning pages. "Did Arthur ever mention this to you?" he asked. "Never." Harold studied the signature, then accessed Whitmore Supply's corporate records portal and printed the share assignment Melissa had referenced the night before. It had been filed with the company and used as part of the paperwork presented to the bank. For the first time, I saw the full page. Arthur's signature sat at the bottom. My stomach tightened. Side by side, the 2 signatures were not merely similar. They matched down to a tiny break in the downward stroke of the W. Harold didn't call it forgery. Not yet. He said he wanted a document examiner to review both files. Then he called Claire while I sat across from him. She confirmed that the bank had relied on a management authorization attached to the same filing packet when it expanded Daniel's authority over the trust account. Harold's face hardened. So the bank change and the share assignment came through together. I stared at him. Arthur never told me any of this. Harold looked back at the document. He never told me either. That frightened me more than anything Melissa had said. Before I left, Harold advised me not to confront Daniel or Melissa. He wanted to know who had filed the paperwork and when. So I did something I had never done in my marriage or motherhood. I pretended not to know. When Melissa called that afternoon, I softened my voice. I told her perhaps she was right, that maybe Daniel should help with the complicated financial matters. There was a pause. Then she became warm again. Almost relieved. I hated how easily she accepted the version of me that needed managing. Still, I let her believe it. By Friday, Daniel brought over another stack of forms. Insurance notices. Tax authorizations. Corporate records. I smiled, poured coffee, and signed nothing until I had read every line. While Daniel stepped outside to answer a call, I copied 3 pages on the old printer in Arthur's study. One name appeared twice. D.W. Legacy Holdings. I drove to a quiet grocery store parking lot 2 miles from home and called Martin Keller, the company accountant, from my cell phone with the windows rolled up. Martin went quiet when I gave him the name. Evelyn, that company was formed 11 days after Arthur's funeral. My hand tightened around the phone. Who owns it? I asked. Papers rustled on his end. Then Martin said something that changed the shape of everything. Daniel owns 49%. I closed my eyes. And the other 51? There was a long silence. Melissa. I didn't answer Martin right away. 51%. That number sat between us like a locked door. Melissa had not created DW Legacy Holdings simply to help Daniel manage the family business. On paper, she had positioned herself to control even him. I thanked Martin, hung up, and drove home through a warm Virginia afternoon that suddenly felt unfamiliar. At every stoplight, I kept hearing Arthur's old voice in my memory, "Read the fine print, Evie." He used to say it whenever I signed anything, even a furniture delivery receipt. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had made a decision. I needed to know whether Daniel was being used or whether he had chosen this with his eyes open. The question hurt because both answers cost me something. If he had been fooled, then my son was weaker than I wanted to believe. If he had known, then I had raised a man who could sit across from me and help take away my voice. 2 days later, I asked him to meet me alone at Cooper's Diner, a little place off Broad Street where Arthur used to take him for pancakes after Little League games. Daniel arrived 10 minutes late and looked tired. I did not mention the copied signature. I only asked about DW Legacy Holdings. His face changed before he answered. He admitted the company existed. He said Melissa had convinced him it would protect his future interest in Whitmore Supply. Then I asked who owned 51%. He looked down at his coffee. I thought we split it evenly. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. Then he said something that made that hope crack. Dad wanted 51% of the voting power kept in my branch of the family. I stared at him. I had never told Daniel that the LLC records gave Melissa 51%, and I had never heard Arthur express any such plan. When I asked where Daniel got that number, he rubbed his forehead and said Melissa must have mentioned it while discussing the company paperwork. That answer was possible. It was also convenient. He became defensive. He accused Harold of turning me against him. Then he left before finishing his coffee. Later, Harold confirmed that he had never discussed a 51% voting plan with Daniel. That evening, Harold called again. He had hired a forensic document examiner named Rebecca Sloan from Alexandria. She had compared Arthur's trust signature with the 1147B contract and more than 20 verified examples. Her preliminary opinion was disturbing. The signature on the trust document had likely been digitally reproduced from an older original. She needed the electronic file to say more. I stood in Arthur's study while Harold spoke, staring at the grandfather clock. At exactly 8:17, it stopped again. This time the lights in the room flickered once. Then Arthur's old desk radio, unplugged for months, gave a sharp burst of static. I knew the cord was still coiled behind it. I stepped backward. The clock began ticking. The radio went silent. And from the top shelf, a framed photograph slipped forward and landed face down on the carpet. Behind it was a yellowed envelope taped to the wall. My name was written across the front in Arthur's handwriting. I reached for it, but my phone rang before I could open it. Harold sounded different now. More urgent. Evelyn, I found an email Arthur sent me 8 months before he died. There's an encrypted attachment. What does the subject line say? I asked. Harold paused. 3 words. If they try. If they try. Harold's words seemed to follow me across the room. I looked at the envelope taped behind Arthur's photograph, and suddenly I understood that whatever my husband had feared, he had expected it long before I did. Give me 10 minutes, I told Harold. Then I opened the envelope. Inside was not a letter. It was a single index card with 4 words in Arthur's handwriting, home before money. Beneath them, he had drawn a tiny clock face with the hands pointing to 8:17. My skin prickled. The grandfather clock behind me had stopped at that exact time 3 times. I had wanted to believe Arthur was somehow warning me. But when I examined the clock more closely, I noticed something I had never seen before. A thin brass tab had been installed behind the lower panel, connected to a small battery-powered timer. Arthur had modified the clock. He had made it stop at 8:17 on purpose. At least that part was not a haunting. It was a message. I still could not explain the burst from the unplugged radio or why the photograph had fallen at that exact moment. That uncertainty stayed with me, but the clock itself had changed meaning. Arthur had built a trail because he believed I might need one. I called Harold back and gave him the phrase. The encrypted file opened immediately. It was a memorandum Arthur had written 8 months before his death. He said Melissa had begun asking unusually specific questions about voting shares, beneficiary rights, and whether ownership could be transferred without every trustee present. He never accused her of anything. Arthur was careful that way. But one sentence made my throat tighten. If Evelyn is ever told I changed control of the company without discussing it with her, assume the document requires independent verification. Harold kept reading while I sat at Arthur's desk, gripping the index card. The memorandum referenced additional safeguards, but the final page was missing from the electronic copy. Harold said the complete version might exist in the firm's off-site trust archive. While his staff requested it, he also secured the electronic filing package from Whitmore Supply and sent it to Rebecca Sloan. Her call came that afternoon. The metadata pushed the timeline backward. The earliest draft of the disputed share assignment had been created 4 months before Arthur died. Someone had started building the paperwork while he was still alive. That frightened me in a different way. This was not a panicked decision made after a funeral. It had been waiting. That evening, Daniel came to my house alone. His face looked older than it had at the diner. I showed him nothing. I only asked one question. Did Melissa ever ask where your father kept old signed contracts? Daniel went pale. He remembered a night months earlier when Melissa said she needed samples of Arthur's signature for corporate records. Daniel had told her the equipment contracts were kept in the study cabinet. One of those files was 1147B. He had pointed her toward the source without knowing what she intended. For the first time, I saw fear replace defensiveness in my son's eyes. The next morning, Harold called from his office. The full trust memorandum had arrived from storage. Evelyn, he said, Arthur left a verification instruction on the missing page. There's a person we're required to contact if anyone challenges control of Whitmore Supply. I asked whether he meant Daniel. No, me? No, Harold took a breath. Arthur named Martin Keller. And beside Martin's name, he wrote one sentence. He has the only number that makes a transfer real. Martin Keller arrived at Harold's office carrying a gray banker's box and a look I had never seen on his face before. Not fear. Certainty. He set the box on the conference table and said, Arthur knew somebody might try to move the company without Evelyn's consent. My heart pounded. Harold opened the missing page of the memorandum. Martin placed 3 old corporate binders beside it. Then the truth came fast. Arthur had created a 3-step verification rule for any transfer involving controlling shares of Whitmore Supply. First, Arthur's signature. Second, written confirmation from Harold. Third, a transaction code issued only by Martin and entered into the company ledger within 10 business days. That was the only number Arthur had meant. Melissa's document had Arthur's signature. Or what looked like it. But Harold had never approved it. Martin had never issued a code. And there was no matching ledger entry. Then what is 1147B? I asked. Martin turned toward me. That's not a trust transaction number. I already knew what he was going to say, but hearing it still made my stomach drop. It's the equipment contract number from 3 years ago. The room went silent. Melissa had copied more than Arthur's signature. The disputed paperwork also carried the identifying number from the source document itself. The mistake tied the false assignment directly back to the old contract. Rebecca Sloan joined us by video call and confirmed that the disputed signature matched the 1147B signature down to microscopic irregularities no person could naturally repeat. Then Harold explained the part Melissa had never known. Without all 3 verification steps, the transfer was legally ineffective under the trust. The voting shares had never left the Whitmore family trust. The bank had relied on paperwork that looked valid on its face, but once the underlying transfer failed, Daniel's expanded authority could be challenged with it. Melissa's 51% of DW Legacy Holdings controlled nothing that Arthur had actually transferred. She had built a company around a door that had never been unlocked. For 1 second, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because after weeks of being treated like a confused old woman, I finally understood what Arthur had left me. Not money. Protection. And beneath that relief was something harder. Arthur had prepared for deception, but he had still trusted me to finish what he started. That afternoon, Daniel came in after Harold asked him to. Melissa was not with him. Harold laid out the documents one by one. Daniel stared at the table. Then he said, barely above a breath, I knew something wasn't right. I felt the words more than I heard them. He admitted Melissa had once said the paperwork was not completely clean. He never asked what she meant. He wanted control of the company. He wanted to believe the details would somehow take care of themselves. The grandfather clock in my mind seemed to stop again at 8:17. Daniel had not forged Arthur's name. But he had chosen not to look. Harold began preparing the evidence for the final trust hearing. Rebecca's report. Martin's records. The metadata. The LLC ownership. Arthur's safeguard. Everything was ready. Then I placed my hand over the file and told Harold to wait. Daniel looked up at me. I had one question left, and I needed the answer before any judge heard a word. Daniel, I said, if Melissa's plan had worked, were you ever going to tell me what you had done? He opened his mouth. Then closed it. And in that silence, I saw the answer before he said a single word. Daniel never gave me the answer I wanted. He gave me the truth instead. I don't know, Mom. 4 words. Quiet. Barely there. But they hurt more than any forged signature ever could. Because I understood what he meant. If Melissa's plan had worked, if the bank accounts had shifted and the voting shares had appeared to belong to them, Daniel might have let me live the rest of my life believing Arthur had chosen them over me. I nodded once and removed my hand from Harold's file. Then we finished this. At the trust hearing 3 days later, Melissa arrived with an attorney and the same composed expression she had worn at my kitchen table. It disappeared piece by piece. Rebecca explained the duplicated signature. Martin produced the corporate ledgers. Harold showed that no approval had ever been issued. Then came DW Legacy Holdings, with Melissa's 51% ownership, followed by the metadata proving the false assignment had been drafted months before Arthur died. Finally, Harold presented Arthur's 3-step safeguard. Without all 3 confirmations, the transfer had never taken effect. The Whitmore voting shares had never legally left the trust. The judge rejected the disputed transfer paperwork, and the bank's reliance on that packet could no longer stand. An independent trustee was appointed to manage the family assets alongside me. Daniel was removed from direct control. His future interest remained protected, but he could no longer reach into the trust simply because someone handed him a pen. Melissa had no authority over it at all. I did not feel triumphant when we walked outside. I felt tired. Daniel stood near the courthouse steps, alone. I'm sorry, he said. I believed he was sorry. I was not yet ready to decide what that apology was worth. Weeks later, he came to my house and placed Arthur's office key on the kitchen table. No papers. No requests. Just the key. After Daniel left, I went into Arthur's study and opened the grandfather clock. I wanted to remove the little timer he had installed. Behind the lower panel, I found more than the brass tab. A thin wire ran to a tiny battery receiver hidden beneath the desk shelf. The old radio still had 2 backup batteries inside its compartment. Arthur's final note explained the rest. He had rigged the timer to interrupt the clock at 8:17 and send one brief pulse to the radio. The photograph had rested against a small spring clip connected to the same mechanism. After several cycles, the clip was designed to release once, exposing the envelope behind the frame. Nothing had moved by magic. Arthur had simply known that I would notice the impossible before I noticed a hidden screw or wire. Then he explained 8/17. It was not a time. It meant August 17th, the date 40 years earlier when we signed the papers on our first little house instead of investing every dollar we had into expanding Whitmore Supply. I had taken his hand and told him, a business can grow again. A family needs somewhere safe to come home to. He had remembered those words for 4 decades. At the bottom of the note he had written, if you ever find this, Evie, I was right to trust you. Protect the home. Protect yourself. Money comes after both. I stayed in his study long after sunset, holding that page against my chest. The house was quiet except for the steady ticking above me. I thought about Daniel. I loved him. That had not changed. But love no longer meant handing him the keys to every door he asked to open. Forgiveness, if it came, would have to grow without taking my judgment with it. I put Arthur's note beside the old 1147B contract and closed the safe. Then I stood beneath the grandfather clock as the hands reached 8/17. This time it kept moving. So did the second hand. So did the house. So did I. There had never been a ghost there. Only a husband who had trusted his wife to follow the signs, and a woman who had finally learned that protecting her family also meant refusing to disappear inside it.